Right now, the Biden administration is trying to gain more power over what you see on the internet. This is an egregious power grab, and we're going to tell you about someone from inside the FCC warning us about it, because the question is, who will control the internet? If the Biden administration has its way, the government will. We see them just trying to wrestle that power into their own arms every damn day. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr issued a dire warning that the Biden administration is about to hand the FCC unprecedented power. This is one of the heads of the FCC warning about the power his own commission is about to receive. We should pay attention to this. If this is someone who's in this commission saying, hey, anyone else think we shouldn't have this power here? He's the lone man in
Everyone
the room.
loves power. Everyone loves power. So when someone is saying, wait a second, this is too much power, we should pay attention. That's like George Washington saying, hey, would you like to be, elected in perpetuity?
Yeah.
He's like, no. Two terms. I'm done. I need to cede power to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kudos for somebody actually standing up to power in a position that they were put in. Like, they're doing their job.
And they're risking their job, by the way.
And it's like at the end of Batman when they destroy that power to see the whole city.
Right.
And and he's like, we shouldn't have this.
The Dark Knight.
This is not very good. Right. Yes, The Dark Knight. Okay, so let's take a look at the letter that he posted just a few days ago. What this is about is that the FCC is about to vote on President Biden's plan to give the administration state effective control of all internet services and infrastructure. Carr published this warning saying the plan is equivalent to Soviet-era planning and control. Say no more, right? Because Soviet-era plan and control was concentration in the hands of a few. That's the reason that was a large reason behind infrastructure collapse in the Soviet Union, why we no longer have it. We spoke about this when the rules were announced a few weeks ago. It amounts to a power grab for net neutrality long after net neutrality has long since been defeated. Now, net neutrality is the notion that the FCC can create laws to prevent internet service providers, I'm going to call them ISPs from now on, from prioritizing, slowing down, or blocking content online. This was hotly debated during the Obama years, and it was struck down when the Trump administration took office. California tried to put it back in place, and it was struck down again in the courts. Now, net neutrality is kind of a double negative when we're talking about it, because it prevents ISPs and mobile companies from changing the speed that they deliver data or prioritizing some data based on whether or not they make money from those content or sites. Instead, with net neutrality, it's the FCC deciding what's fair, not capitalism. So I know I'm talking in a lot of double negatives, and I feel like these nomenclatures are written to confuse us, so we don't know who has power and who doesn't. So right now, as it stands, this power is not in the federal government. It rests in the hands of capitalistic terms the internet service providers decide. Now, when this was struck down, Democrats cried bloody murder that this would ruin the internet once and for all. Here, this one makes me laugh because it just does not age well. Here is NBC saying that when we don't have net neutrality, it will marginalize LGBTQ plus people because their corner of the internet will be slowed. Take a look at this warning from years and years ago saying, LGBTQ people are going to be in big trouble when the federal government does not regulate the internet. Boy, did they have that backwards, because since the end of net neutrality,
the opposite,
the internet is more LGBTQ. It certainly is not less. I don't know what internet, they were worried about. Most of the opposition was about what you would or wouldn't see on the internet. Like, you wouldn't see free speech. You won't see marginalized people. Well, now, Democrats are completely on the other side of that, and they're worried about what you can see. So the argument has changed, right? On the left, they're like, oh no, we won't see these marginalized people, and that's we need full transparency of the internet. Now they're like, oh no, you're seeing things that's anti-COVID or whatever. You can't see that. So we're worried about what you do see. Now here is Bernie Sanders warning about net neutrality, again, back during the Obama years. Watch.
A disastrous decision. It will impact every American. It will give huge advantages to big corporations over small businesses, to big media companies over smaller media outlets. We've got to do everything we can to defeat this thing in the courts and defeat it legislatively.
Well, he was wrong. It was not the end of the internet. The internet persisted with these freedoms, and the rules of capitalism has mostly been working. I'll put an asterisk there, and then you can ask me about it later if you want me to expand. So back then, now back to September of this year, the FCC released this plan. They say that the FCC is going to be given additional authority to safeguard national security, advance public safety, protect consumers, and facilitate broadband deployment. Now, this is very broad, don't you think? Whereas before it was like, we want to make sure that you get everything on the internet. Now the language is, we want to make sure you're not getting a lot of stuff on the internet. Do you see how this argument has flipped, but it's still the same control mechanism? And also, when you're talking about, more powers to a federal agency, and they're not a judicial branch, I'm out. That's why Commissioner Carr left us this warning just a few days ago. Look what he says. He says last month, the FCC gave these marching orders. The president called on the FCC to implement this long thing that we just showed you. What he says here is, for the first time ever, those rules would give the federal government a roving mandate to micromanage nearly every aspect of how the internet functions, from how ISPs allocate capital and where they build, to the services that consumers can purchase. So services, like, are we talking about shows? Like maybe you want to watch a news program like this. Would you be allowed? From the profits that the ISPs can realize and how they market and advertise services, to the discounts and promotions that customers can receive. Talk about central planning. So it's like everything about the internet, right, will be regulatable. He says that the Biden administration is blaming the private sector for the current digital problems, and he explains how this will give the government almost mafia-style control. He says it gets worse. The FCC reserves the right to regulate both actions and omissions. In other words, if a company takes actions, they're liable. They'll get in trouble. If they do nothing, they'll be liable. They'll get in trouble. This is where he says this is like Soviet studies, right? He says the plan sweeps entire industries within the FCC's jurisdiction for the first time in its 90-year history. Look down the bottom. You can read this for yourself later. But what he says is Congress never authorized the FCC to regulate these industries or entities. So to all businesses and individuals that will be subject to this for the first time, I hope you guys have good lawyers. I think what he's meaning, and what we're going to talk about later, is this has to be contested in court. It just has to, because this is the government taking away capitalistic freedoms from these companies. The way that it was shut down during the Obama years was in the courts, was when AT&T, Google, Comcast, they fought it, and they will have to do that again. Undoubtedly they will, or else they'll just be regulated out of existence. And then the internet will literally become state-run. That's terrifying. That's Hunger Games level. Like, you cannot, the internet will belong to the government. Can you imagine?
No, this
I
is
won't be able to sit here like this.
No, this is unbelievable.
No way.
This will change the internet forever.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it. Again, I kind of come back to the story we did earlier about the digital identification. You have a choice right now to speak out against this, because this is coming. You saw when people rose up against net neutrality, they rose up and spoke out. All of these websites shut down, went black. They they shut down their websites. Wikipedia, remember Wikipedia? I think went black. Everyone's like, no, we're not going to allow this to happen.
Right.
And the internet rose up and said, no, this can't happen. Now there's like silence on this. They're fine. The left is like fine with what the Biden administration is doing here.
Yeah, it's crazy. He said that even though they've been discussing these type of plans for 2 years, take a look here. He says there's little or no evidence that it even needs to happen. They're not proving that there's already a problem. They're just saying they want this. He says even in the absence of any evidence of intentional discrimination, the Biden plan states that the FCC can impose potentially unbounded liability if the agency finds that some act or failure to act happened to result in a disparate impact based on the FCC's own judgment. That makes them the law enforcer, the judge, all of that, right? So you can imagine. So let's just play this out for a second. You have, let's say, AT&T for your home internet, and it's delivering you a show like this. and they decide that they don't like what we do because they may, accuse us of a misinformation, and then they can get fined, right? And they will be liable for all the content on their air. And then what happens? Then they can fine the ISP. The ISP will just say, well, we're not going to carry content like this. It's too risky. And so what will you get is basically what we think of as North Korea, right? The news that they get. I've never been to North Korea. I don't know how that really works. It's a trope.
This show, we have shown people that with the digital currency, they will be controlling what we spend, where we can go, what we can do. And now this is going to set the bar for them, controlling what we see, what we read, what we hear. I mean, this is the formation of total control. This is literally like a dictatorship is forming in front of our eyes.
Right. Now, what can we as citizens do about it? Nothing, because the FCC will vote on its own powers. So how do you think that's going to go? Hey, everybody here, do you want to expand the role of the agency and our powers? Yeah, we all do. Okay, good. So this vote's not up to us, and it's also not up to our elected officials. So we can't really call anybody and say, vote this down, unless you know someone who works at the FCC, or you can support this guy, Brendan Carr. I suppose you can tell your elected official that you would like to strip powers from the FCC. I don't know how far that will get you, but it's worth a call. But even if this passes the vote, Commissioner Carr had said, I hope they have good lawyers. There is reason to believe this will go to the Supreme Court. We showed you this argument from Reason.com, an outlet that I like quite a bit. They said that this power grab won't stand up to legal scrutiny thanks to this Supreme Court decision from 2021, where the court relied on the so-called major questions doctrine to make it more difficult for agencies to expand their power. And that went in the way of less power for a federal agency. So probably that would apply to net neutrality, but we don't know. And who would challenge this? The ISPs and tech companies, just like they did during the Obama years. So again, in this case, our elected officials cannot save us from this egregious power grab. It would have to be the private sector to do so, and if they even have the guts, because so many of them have acted like Theon Greyjoy from Game of Thrones. The government's been basically beating and humiliating them through censorship. You think of Google, right? Okay, censor this, Twitter, Facebook, they've been doing exactly as they're told, like good lapdogs. And so are they going to then have the guts to lawyer up and protect basically their right to exist? Because if they don't, they will be punished and fined. They'll be even more Theon Greyjoyed, excuse the Game of Thrones reference, than they already were. So it's going to get hot in here, up in this internet, folks.
This is terrifying.
I just want to point out, too, that today I am wearing my Game of Thrones t-shirt.
Oh,
so
you came in costume.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Very good.
Ready.
Smart move. Yeah, let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Do you want the Biden administration controlling your internet speeds and allowing you to see what they want you to see at which speed they want you to see? Oh, you want to jump on YouTube and watch Redacted? Sorry, internet speeds are throttled because they don't like what we're saying here on this show.
Yes.
That's exactly what's saying. Oh, you want to go to like InfoWars? You want to read that website? Sorry. Very difficult to load those pictures and videos because the Biden administration doesn't want you to see that.
Right. And that sounds speculative, but they did it to Twitter accounts they don't like by asking Twitter to downrank and hide those. So why wouldn't they do that for the actual...
It's not a conspiracy theory.
No,
these
for
are the
actual
same people.
Pressure of the valve. Yeah.
These are the same people that use the IRS to go after political opponents. I mean, you think this is a conspiracy theory? It's not. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
I was just going to say, look at what Canada's doing with the fining of journalists for spreading misinformation or disinformation. Like they're coming for this type of content.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It really is. And journalists are being fined in other countries as well. So it's a brave new world, sadly. It's very Orwellian. It really is. Really, really terrible. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live.